Welcome to the Two Stewards Show. The things said in this episode are timeless, classic, and unfading. Just like Trump's new appointments, executive orders, and tariffs. We talk Singh, Lutnick, Carney, drugs, border, UBI, diplomacy, helicopter money, Hogue Commission, and MAHA. That's Make America Healthy Again. To get in touch, email us at hello@twostewards.ca. Remember, this show is not financial advice, but it is valuable for listening amusement purposes. Now, let's get this episode released before the news is completely irrelevant and obsolete.
Well, hello everybody. Welcome to the Two Stewards Show. I'm Mark, and I'm here with Brent. Brent?
And Mark, we changed the tables today, or turned the tables?
Yes,
Flip
how the tables
right
have turned.
That just means I'm sitting on the other side of the table.
I like to switch things up here at the Two Stewards Show.
So that means we're going to say something smart today.
Nope, not today. Today is not that day, Brent. Sorry. But we are going to do a current events episode. Lots of stuff happening and lots of information out there. So we'll cobble together what information we can for our listeners. So yeah, let's head over to the States. This is where we've been for a little while. And just looking at executive orders coming out of the White House, and they're like, there's so many, it's hard to keep track of. But there's a few highlights.
Does this guy sleep, or is he just signing constantly?
Well, it is an interesting contrast to the previous president. I mean, obviously, it's not the president doing all the work, right? He's got a staff and a team, but like he's driving them. Right, and so you really wonder who was driving what for the last 4 years. But in any case, executive orders coming out. So Trump has basically specified there's no support for the transgender movement in the federal government. Right, there's I wrote down one gender, but it's two. That would be interesting. No, but basically two genders. No more support for that.
We've taken a turn, folks. Yeah. Only one gender.
New executive order just came out called Ending Radical Indoctrination in K-12. So this is like a big overhaul of the education system and what's being taught. There's going to be some differences at the state level, obviously, but as far as the federal government isn't concerned, they want to end this, and yeah, I mean, there's a ton of information in the in just that. I mean, you could do a whole podcast on just that executive order, but yeah,
and we're not going to do that.
No, we're not going to do that. But imprinting anti-American, subversive, harmful, and false ideologies on our nation's children not only violates long-standing anti-discrimination civil rights laws in many cases, but usurps basic parental authority. And then goes on there. But the idea is, and I'm just reading from Twitter post here. Oops, I just lost it.
Well, they wanted to prevent parental oversight, right? Or limit.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah, like the state, I guess the previous administration, the state wants to kind of take over.
Yep.
What should be the responsibility of the parents in indoctrinating the kids, and this is kind of backtracking on that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, so that's part of the.
It's easy. They're so vulnerable, right? Like, here, why don't you just take this young child and put our ideologies into its head, and don't make it this echo chamber where they don't actually get a chance to hear any other kind of conflicting views, let alone their parents.
Yeah. So, I mean, the big question for me about the new government is it going to be just another big government, but with different ideas? Mm-hmm. Right? And it looks like maybe not, but that's
a wise probing question.
I'll leave that one alone.
I think send a message to Trump.
No, but that's the concern, right? Is it just going to be more of the same, but from a different angle, right? And hopefully not. And it looks like they're trying to actually cut down the size of government and the influence of government. So quick synopsis of this executive order, and then we'll move on to another one. But end discriminatory equity ideology and gender ideology, protect parental rights, launching an ending indoctrination strategy, ending contracts with and funding streams for providers of subversive ideologies in K-12 instruction and in K-12 teacher education. So that's really key. We'll get back to that. End funding for all schools that engage directly or indirectly instruction or promotion of these ideologies and who interfere with parents' ability to access information. And then prosecute K-12 teachers and school officials who violate the law by sexually exploiting minors, unlawful practice of engaging in therapeutic practices without a license, and facilitating social transition. So basically what's been happening that parents aren't aware of, like getting parents back in there. The one thing that this thing didn't mention was teachers' unions and accreditation. So that is a crucial part of the puzzle here, right? Because if you don't end that side of it, it's still going to happen, whatever laws you pass, right? And I've seen videos of teachers saying like, well, I'm not changing anything.
Yeah.
I'm just going to like go more underground or whatever, right? So, but where it says, talks about K-12 teacher education, that's the real interesting part here. So we'll see what happens. But that was just, the latest executive order. One thing we didn't talk about last time was they are going to designate drug cartels as terrorist organizations. So that's a whole nother level.
Does that mean that Canada is a terrorist organization?
Well, that's what I'm really wondering about.
They're talking about fentanyl, right? And the drug trafficking as being a big reason why we have to put tariffs, or they have to put tariffs on Canada, is because you got all this drug.
Yeah, I haven't seen anybody kind of pick up on this yet. And I mean,
except for you and I.
This is my my MO is to find like stuff that smart people have talked about, and then just bring that over to the podcast without any original thought.
Yeah,
but I haven't found this one yet.
My job is to listen to you.
To disagree, or agree. No, but the people are thinking about Mexico in Mexico. But the U.S. has stated time and again, like you have Chinese fentanyl coming into Canada, and then you have Mexican drug cartels who are distributing it. So if we have arguably Chinese drug cartels operating and Mexican drug cartels operating in Canada, and they're terrorist organizations, like what does that mean?
Yeah.
Are we going to see like raids on Canadian soil? I doubt it. But it gives further strength to the whole tariff argument that like, okay, we'll respect your sovereignty
until you address this and this.
Yeah. Which is what drives me nuts about the whole, we'll talk about the tariffs after, but this is a huge issue, and nobody's talking directly about this.
It's very pro-American, right? Like they don't want, in all of these executive orders, there's, try and get rid of this anti-American sentiment and make it very much about what is best for America. Yeah.
Which, the tariff side of things is not good for us. But if I was an American, I'd be like, sweet. Sweet. And we'll talk about the tariff stuff in a minute. But it's stuff that we should be doing anyways. The one highlight, they did funding pause, foreign aid and so forth, pauses of funding. And one of them was the $50 million for condoms in Gaza.
Wait, they're pausing the funding on that?
Yeah, they're pausing and probably just going to cut it.
The post I read was that's about 1,000 condoms per man per day. So
they're busy over there.
That was a guess. I don't know.
Yeah, well,
that's ridiculous.
It is, and this is why they're pausing all the funding.
Yeah,
because this is just clearly a way to funnel money to Hamas.
I almost love to be in the government organization reading through like we're spending money on this, we're spending money on this.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah, somebody did a diagram of like how money gets spent and what all the non-governmental organizations. Maybe we'll do a deep dive into that later, but it's also the states, so not particularly applicable, but like it was ridiculous how many thousands of NGOs there are operating. And it was just like, the little, like a little, almost like a solar system, right? Like a ball here, and then that's connected to like a whole bunch here. So you can see like the money goes to this one, and then it gets funneled to all these other ones for all these little pet things. And yeah, what are you actually funding, right? You're sending money to this big organization that does whatever, World Health stuff, but then it goes to all these other ones, which, is it money laundering? I don't know, but it's certainly bad ideas. So, I mean, we got enough of our own
But
problems.
it's free money, Mark. You can do whatever you want with free money.
Yeah. So, be interesting to see what how much they actually cut out of the budget, because they're trying to cut like $1 trillion or something, right? Which is of spending, which is like, wow,
Yeah.
crazy. Okay, new appointments. There's a new head of the Environmental Protection Agency, so that will be interesting to see what happens there with their pro-energy stance. And I'm assuming, I don't know what this guy's about, but I'm assuming it's going to be like get rid of regulations and clear the way for mineral and oil exploitation. Interesting one, the confirmation hearing of John F. Kennedy Jr. You would think this guy was the devil incarnate from the grilling he got. I mean, okay, so this is the interesting part about the Trump administration, right? People think like it's all MAGA, right-wing, Nazis, they're fond of saying. But he has built like a very broad consensus of people from like both sides of the spectrum in his organization, right? Like RFK, he's a lifelong Democrat. Trump himself was a Democrat, right? And Tulsi Gabbard, probably the new defense director, also lifelong Democrat, right? So it's interesting. We'll see what happens, but it's not like there's this populist right-wing movement, right? This is, you could say, it's an America First movement, and whoever can contribute to that is invited. We'll see what happens. But yeah, RFK Jr., change that, Robert F. Kennedy. And I mean, really, he's saying like, we need less obesity and more good food and sunshine for people. And like the Democrats just roasted him. And then when you look at, I lost it here. But somebody did a little
roast him in like a deep fryer at McDonald's, or so we need
more. Well, he said like in response to somebody, if you want to eat a cheeseburger and a Diet Coke, and you know what, my boss loves that, right? Referring to Trump. Yeah. That was a bit of a chuckle. Like you should be free to do that, but you should know the risk associated with it.
Yeah.
And like
you have to sign a waiver every time you order something at McDonald's?
No, but like so they outlawed or canceled the use of was it red dye? Basically red dye in food products in the States. Like most other countries in the world have, but they hadn't done it in the States. Why? I don't know. Somebody's probably getting paid, right? But they said like it's actually bad for you, and most people accepted that. There's links to cancer in addition to all kinds of other stuff, and so this is one of the first things they've done before RFK is even actually in place. But yeah, the listing, the funding for like Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, all these people who are grilling him, right? They've received millions and millions from Big Pharma. In their election campaigns, right? So it's like, what is the actual interest here? Now, I'm assuming that most congressmen and senators get funding from Big Pharma because they'll just like pay everybody to have influence. But you just see somebody who's saying like, we should just be healthy and not be on drugs and like reduce obesity and stuff. And everybody's losing their minds. Like, how could you say this? What are you like, have you seen a picture of this guy without a shirt on?
Yeah.
He's 70.
No, I haven't.
RFK, he's 70 years old.
Yeah.
He's ripped. Like he's in incredible shape. Now he's doing like testosterone replacement therapy and stuff as well. He's getting some help. But like the point is he's active. They did like the press videos of him working out and stuff, right? And like he can do push-ups and he can lift weights and stuff, right?
70, yeah.
Like he's not huge, but he's like, I'd be happy to look like that now. Never mind when I'm 70.
Yeah.
So, you know, a little bit he practices what he preaches. So there's been tons of opposition to him. And we'll see what happens. But I mean, a lot of the stuff he's talking about is common sense. He gets flack for being sort of an anti-vaxxer. And he's not anti every vaccine, but he's like, let's look at the efficacy of vaccines. And do we need everything that we're pumping into our bodies?
Yeah.
Right? Like, we're sicker than we've ever been. So let's do something about it, right? Maha, make America healthy again. So that will be an interesting, interesting time. I think he's confirmed. So we'll see what happens. They're reducing the federal workforce. So I think like everybody in the federal workforce got an email, and it's, to reply to this, you get these automated emails, right? This one is like, if you wish to take advantage of this offer, type resign in the header in your reply.
Like a marketing email?
If you want to unsubscribe from your job, type resign. But yeah,
to stop these emails, press 1.
But basically they're saying, okay, anybody in the federal workforce, if you want to quit now, we'll give you 8 months severance, and just anybody. See you later. So
wow.
Yeah, interesting. So how's that going to pan out? I don't know, but it's kind of interesting that you're going to take hopefully all the people who you don't want, who
don't want to be there.
If they don't want to be there, just like, here's your chance, get out, and we'll give you 8 months severance, with the implication being like, you don't take this now, there may be no severance later on, because we'll just see mass layoffs.
Has this ever happened in history of America before? Like, I could just imagine this actually working and all of the government employees stop and like, wait a minute. That's probably not a good idea. We should hire some back.
Well, it's a calculated risk, right? That hopefully you get rid of the bad apples, and then if you need to hire a few more, do that. But you'd rather add some than have to keep firing. Right. And, of course, people are up in arms like, what about air traffic controllers? And like, we'll figure it out.
What about them?
Yeah. Well, it's already critically underfunded and understaffed, and if they all quit. So we'll see what happens. But I mean, can they get any worse? I don't know. But yeah, type resign in header. That's I like that one. So DOGE is hard at work, the Department of Government Efficiency. But we're not in the U.S. We're in Canada. But this all affects us, right? I mean, culturally, sets a precedent for a potential new government in Canada to do a lot of the same measures. But we're not seeing that kind of response now, right? So we should talk about tariffs.
Yeah. Isn't Trudeau still kicking? Like he's still prime minister, dear life, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's looking more and more like Carney is going to be the new prime minister. And was this a plan all along? I don't know. I can't see that Trudeau wants to actually step down, but if he does, at least Carney will continue his legacy. Who knows what other people would do, right?
Yeah.
So, all sorts of theories floating around, like this was the plan all along. And the leadership race is just a token race, which I think it is, right? They want Carney, and they've got a few people putting up a brave front or a brave face.
Yeah.
Does Freeland really want to be prime minister? I don't know. Be interesting to see like who's in the new cabinet. There are some people quitting, and it's just saying like, we're done with politics.
Type resign in header. See you later.
Yeah, so like Anita Anand, who is, I don't know if she's actually doing anything anymore, but she was defense minister for a while. As terrible as all of them. So, but we heard the Howard Lutnick, who's the, Secretary of Trade, I think, in the States now. He's like billionaire dude, right? Head of Cantor Fitzgerald, one of the biggest private wealth management firms, banks. Anyways, he's up there, and he was talking about the tariffs. And he's saying, look, guys, there's two levels of tariffs here. One is just tied to trade, right? And that will be like a 2 to 4% thing that we're going to evaluate every month and see what's working and what's not, and how that's going to, how that affects.
Well, because the purpose of the tariff is to boost the U.S. economy. And bring jobs back and get things going again.
Yeah, exactly.
So they would implement something. They would say, wait, is this working or not? Okay, well, let's adjust.
Yeah. And so that's a much smaller one. But, our politicians are conflating the two, right? For their own purposes. The other level of tariffs is more active. And he's like, that one is tied directly to the border and to drugs and stuff. And I've seen all kinds of infographics that people have put up saying, like, what are they talking about? There's no... the amount of drugs flowing into, or the amount of drugs seized is like, 50 times higher at the southern border than the northern border. So what are they getting worked up about, right? So number one, that's the amount seized, not the amount that's actually going through.
We're just better at it than that.
Yeah, exactly. And there's probably more attention at the southern border because they trusted for a long time that, like, hey, we're neighbors and friends. We're going to, do what we can. Whereas, like in Mexico, it's not a third world country, but it's not a first world country either. So there's much more risk there.
A lot more scrutiny.
Of cartels operating with impunity, which, you didn't think we had here. But as it turns out,
they haven't built that wall yet.
We do have it here. They're building it.
Okay.
It is getting built.
Across Canada and U.S.
No, just U.S. Mexico.
Okay.
There's still lots of tunnels. So see about that. But anyway, second level of tariffs is the 25% tariff, which is the one that could be devastating to us. And he said, like, it's tied to the border and to drugs. And like, it's not a hard, if we see action on this, then maybe these tariffs don't happen. Right. So it's still not for sure. I think February 4th or something was the date.
But the onus is on us. Like, I would say us, Canada, not me, but to respond and do the right thing.
Yeah, and he's not saying you have to stop the flow immediately, like 100% do everything, but like you got to start working towards it. Like, do something, right? Take this seriously is what they're saying. And like, we're not. So you have, on one hand, we talked about Danielle Smith a couple episodes ago, who's engaging in diplomacy and actually going down there and schmoozing and trying to build relationships and be like, hey guys, can't we all just get along? That's a bit of an oversimplification. But then you have Trudeau and Doug Ford, for whatever reason. There's a reason. I mean, really, he's a very small C conservative, if you could consider him that. But anyways, him sitting next to Trudeau saying, like, we're going to cut off electricity and we're going to, whatever they tariff us, we're going to tariff them. So that's one response, but that's called, like, that's a trade war. Is that, who's got the upper hand? Probably the guys who are buying everything from us, right? So, you want to cut off electricity to the States, fine. Where are you going to send that? There's nowhere else to send it, dummy. So we're just going to withhold it and then impoverish ourselves, right? Get no money as opposed to some. So it's, we never talk about the provincial government, but maybe we should a little bit more, especially with the election coming up. But it's like, I don't know. I think it's kind of indistinguishable from a Liberal government. Like, maybe not as crazy, but certainly not, you'd think we have a conservative Ontario premier. Well, we see now the stark difference between Trump in the States and, like, we're going to stop this and we're going to stop that. And here's all the, we're not doing that stuff. Public schools still have all the same indoctrination and ideology in Ontario. Like, where's the action on that?
Yeah. I'm curious how how does the Canadian economy get affected and what does the Bank of Canada do? Because we just lowered rates.
Yep.
Which I think was kind of, everybody knew we were going to lower rates and everybody's applauding, yay, we're going down. But if tariffs happen, is inflation going to kick back? Like, we just came through COVID and they've done all this, like, stimulus, sending money out, kind of like quantitative easing, basically helping out people, businesses, survive that crisis. Whether it was orchestrated or not is beyond the scope of this podcast.
No conspiracies beyond our scope, Brent.
But what can the Bank of Canada do now? Like, if they slapped on these 25% tariffs on everything, that's just going to make everything more expensive.
Yeah, I mean, what can the bank do? Their purview is really just like interest rates,
Yeah.
right? So they could lower them. I don't know. So the U.S. just held, right, with the decisions on the same day. That was yesterday. And so U.S. held and we dropped. So, I mean, right away, that's bad news for the Canadian dollar.
Yeah.
If
and
we're
if that
concerned
trend's
about
going to
that.
continue.
Yeah, is it? I mean, I don't think they can, but I mean, what they can and should do is different from what they will actually do. I think the bigger concern is more, is not, let's get this wrong, not monetary policy, which is like what the Bank of Canada does, but fiscal policy, which is like spending money and deficits and all that stuff, right? So you've seen...
handing out checks.
Yeah, and so we talked about this a couple episodes ago where Trudeau had just those couple words about supports for Canadians or whatever.
So people who have lost their job due to tariffs, like impacting their company or whatever, right?
Well, now they're coming out with more comprehensive information saying we're planning for potentially a COVID level response to these tariffs. Like, did we learn nothing? I mean, yeah, apparently, yeah, we learned nothing, right?
So
I mean,
this
in their
means
minds,
that if
COVID response was a win.
Yeah. So if you're a worker and the tariffs come in and all of a sudden you lose your job
Yep.
because your company for some reason can't afford to exist anymore, it shuts down, or like lays you off because they have to dial back, then the government will step in with some money and say, here you go, continue on your way.
Yeah, so CERB to support the companies, loans, personal loans. Who knows, right? What they're actually going to do, but it involves spending like a boatload of money,
COVID level,
essentially. Yeah, that's what they've said, right? So
didn't they double the money supply during COVID?
I don't know if it was double. I don't know.
I feel like at one point it was like half of the dollars that were ever in existence in the U.S. was in the
in the U.S.
years. Like Canada is similar.
Yeah. Actually,
Maybe
we were
not
better.
quite.
We were better than the U.S. in that regard. We did better. Made more money. Yeah, I mean they've done some QT since then and reduced some of the dollars, but I think that program's over now, anyways. But so I mean Trudeau's talked about it, Carney has talked about it, Freeland has talked about it. About the response, and then you see
like we still haven't healed from COVID. That's what I'm thinking, right? Is you've come through this crisis. We're still going to get hit with it, right? We have all these mortgages that are like coming due. We still have the effects, like we have the inflation that happened. It didn't go away, right? Inflation doesn't go away. It can slow down, but groceries, I mean, I don't buy a lot of steak anymore, right? Because I just I'll look at the price. That's why I never go to your house.
So it's a win-win.
Inflation is a good thing,
Yeah. No, but I mean, in the the official government line is that they had a successful COVID response, and they helped Canadians and lifted people out of poverty. Blah blah blah, and they may need to do that again. So. Okay, great. If you're a Canadian on the street, and the whole reason that everybody's up in arms against the Liberal government is because of the cost of living. Other stuff too, but it's the cost of living mainly. But they're prepared to do it all over again. So are we going to see, $1.2 million bungalows in Hamilton again? I don't know. But that's what happened, right?
Yeah.
Now, I mean, that was also a function of interest rates being super, super low. So are they going to put pressure on the Bank of Canada to drop interest rates? Probably. But I mean, that's just anybody looking at this is that would be disastrous, especially when the States is holding. So number one, what happens to the Canadian dollar, right? It'll probably drop more than we've seen now. And they've also talked about a spike in the US dollar as they go through some of these programs. Initial spike and then a drop. So you could see a really big discrepancy between CAD and US. But the other one then is inflation, right? If they do this. So Jagmeet Singh What can I say about the guy? Bless his heart. Is now changing his tune. I don't know if you remember, like, we ripped up the supply and confidence agreement, and the first opportunity I have, we're going to bring this government down. And I was like, maybe, we got these tariffs and stuff, so probably we would support the government if they're going to spend more money and just, flip-flop saying, right? But I think everybody also kind of called this and said, yeah, that's what he's saying now. When push comes to shove, he's not going to do it. So now he's basically saying, like, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to support this government. So somebody...
If there's one thing you can count on, you can't count on him.
At least there's some certainty in this world, right? Somebody has pointed out that there was a bill that amended the Elections Act, which said we got to have elections on the whatever... this specific day every 4 years or whatever, or 4 years after the date of the last election. So that's not the actual official Elections Act. This was a bill that modified it. So potentially, Carney, if he comes in and becomes prime minister, could say we're going to repeal that bill, and that gives us until November 2026 to have an election. So we could potentially be looking at another year and a half of... more than a year and a half of Liberal government under Mark Carney, an unelected prime minister. So you think Canadians were mad before. Now, I think they're counting on the fact that they're just going to have a helicopter dropping money all over the country.
Yeah, I don't even know how to respond, because I think if you look at this as somebody... I guess inflation impacts the people who don't own assets.
Correct.
Right? So on the show, we've kind of been going through ways to get assets. And I think for people who are listening who own assets, they look at this. I get a sense of like indifference, right? It's like, hey, culturally speaking, this is not good. Like, it's not good for economy. It's not good for our society. People, the wealth gap growing, right? Like disparity between those who have things and those who don't. And this just makes it worse. So there's lots of negatives too, but it's also like, if you personally set up your finances to weather this sort of thing, like, I don't know, maybe is that a good way to look at it? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if you have assets and inflation hits hard, like you're good.
You benefit, yeah.
You benefit. So if you don't have assets, it's harder to get.
I guess what it is, it's the sad reality of the system, right? Because we're here to try to say, okay, we want to steward through whatever comes our way in a wise manner. And the system just basically dictates to us, you got to own something that is scarce, like hard to produce, and, pays you income, right? It doesn't take money out of your pocket every day. Like, that's like super simple. Rich Dad, Poor Dad book, everybody.
Yeah.
Don't buy liabilities, buy assets.
Exactly.
But the other thing is, don't rely on your income, right? Like your personal job income. And what we see in here, if you work for the government, resign immediately. But you can't expect to go through these turbulent economic times supporting your household just relying on your income only, right? Especially, you got all these other forces too, right? Like AI taking over your jobs, which apparently, what did Jobst say? It's not going to rule the world, but it could take over your job, or a big part of it, right? And if you don't have another source of income or another income stream, it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
But if you do, it's like, okay, well, bring it on,
Well, I mean, initially, the government's just going to, if this happens, no saying that it will, but if it does, and it looks likely, like there's going to be lots of money out there for people.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's going to catch up with inflation, right?
It'll catch up, and then
the minute you get a $2,000 check and I get a $2,000 check, I'm going to spend mine first before the prices go up.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, if you get
part of that reason, I'm going to run faster. So
to the bank or to Best Buy to buy a big TV.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you do receive that money, the best thing you do is buy an asset.
Bitcoin.
Or buy something. Yeah. Buy Bitcoin. If you don't like Bitcoin.
No, that's not financial advice though.
No, it's not. But get an asset, right? You can also go Addy Invest. We just had him on, right? You can buy some real estate, even if you only have $1,000 or whatever. oh man, it is going to be a very interesting year. A couple other quick highlights. The Hogue Commission, we can get back to this, but the Hogue Commission released their report that's on the foreign interference, essentially. And surprise, surprise, oh, there's nothing really going on, guys. There's some areas of concern. There's, things could have been handled better in this or that particular instance, and people are parsing through this report, so maybe we'll have a more full episode on it later. But the judge that Trudeau appointed to investigate his government, who is friendly to him and has family ties and is part of the Laurentian mob, didn't really release much, and they're going to seal a bunch of the information for 99 years or something. So disappointing. Maybe we got to have Sam Cooper back on to walk us through it. But there was a few things they couldn't ignore or couldn't hide that came out. But not a surprise, but disappointing. The other one, you talked about AI. So this Chinese company, DeepSeek, has completely upset the AI market, right? They came out with a model that apparently uses way less computing power and is much more efficient than OpenAI, who's kind of the leader in the AI space, right? So these are companies that offer their services, their language learning model, for people to do AI stuff. So whatever you do in your business, right?
Yeah.
So they just came out and said, yeah, we did all this with way less power. So, I mean, there's a lot of concerns or questions like, is this just the Chinese government and they're just lying through their teeth, and they actually have like 100,000 GPUs, the graphics processing units, that are actually running this stuff, but they're saying we're doing it on like 6,000. That's a possibility. Is it a front for the Chinese government? It's also almost a certainty. If you're a company in China, you have to be loyal to the Chinese government, or like you're done. So interesting. So that caused like stock market upset and a whole bunch of stuff around OpenAI. OpenAI released some more free and cheaper stuff. But then there's also accusations like they stole our intellectual property, right? It's like you had a model.
Welcome to the world.
Well, I mean, it's a little rich, right? Yeah. OpenAI, it's like you had a model that basically scraped the internet for all the information in the world, and then you put it into your thing. So you got all this stuff for free, and you put it into this model, and now you're upset that somebody did the same thing to you, right? I think the difference here is that they're using existing modules or language learning programs, and they're learning from them. So instead of scraping all the information together, it's like an encyclopedia would take all the information in the world and put it into one thing, right? But then maybe somebody makes like an encyclopedia of encyclopedias. Like I'll take all the information from these 4 or 5 different encyclopedias and put it into one volume. And like you'd be upset at that. That's kind of what they've done, right? So interesting. Now you can actually scrape data from existing AI protocols and programs and make your own. And it turns out like that's way more efficient. So then it's like, that makes sense. It kind of is. Alibaba, another Chinese company, then said, we've got another release which is even more efficient than DeepSeek. So
it's a race.
It's a race. So we'll see what happens. But it's also deflationary, because we've been talking about inflation. This is hugely deflationary, right? And people are worried about like, NVIDIA, like it's going to be bad for them because they produce the chips to make AI work. But it's like, well, maybe not, right? Like you think about, resistors and the advent of computers and stuff, right? They made stuff more efficient and more quicker to use, but actually demand increased for resistors overall, because now
they're more accessible,
and there's more applications. So I think the same thing will happen with AI. So if you're an NVIDIA stockholder, like don't fret, temporary blip, but this will probably, inversely to what people are thinking, actually fuel more demand, because now these things, it's cheaper to actually do this. And we'll find more and more ways to use it, right? Just like any technology.
Yeah, I just think like 50 years ago, I mean, what was the world like 50 years ago? Did you have the internet?
Brent, let me tell you.
tell me. It's a much better place. Mark was not even born. Well, like, could you even conceptualize what AI is and what it does? And like 50 years.
Yeah, not a long
and now
time.
try and imagine 50 years from now, like at the pace of development and all these things, like was DeepSeek even a thing? Like how long ago? And now it's just like totally disrupted this space. And now we got it, like, you know, it's just moving so fast. And like you said, it's deflationary. It's almost like this deflationary trend is increasing exponentially. And is it?
In certain aspects. But then on the other hand, you have monetary and fiscal policy, which is
also increasing.
Seems to be increasing exponentially. So do they cancel each other out? Like, and how do you take advantage of these things, right? Do you need to be in the AI space? Like, I don't know. Is there AI real estate?
Digital real estate.
Yeah. Real estate on the moon. Or well, I mean, they tried that, right? The virtual real estate, and yeah. The people who sold it made a lot of money, put it that way. Everybody else, not so much. But it will be interesting to see what happens with the, in the AI space. If it does have this huge effect, then, I mean, it can only be good if we have a deflationary, if stuff gets cheaper and better, right? And I mean, that's kind of the nature of technology. It gets cheaper and better, usually. So, but yeah, the response in Canada is going to be interesting. And, you know, I was talking to a client the other day, like, hey, I'm thinking about rebalancing or doing this or that. It's like, well, yeah, just wait.
Yeah, it's hard.
Wait a little
while.
while.
Everybody's waiting, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's been kind of the story for a while, right?
Yeah.
If you look at new or home sales and the economy in general, I think everybody who has money is just kind of see how things play out.
Yeah, usually you want to try and make a decision. You want to get all the information you can. Like, oh, I don't even know what information to collect right now.
Exactly.
Nothing. Like, how can I get answers to all my questions? Well, there are no answers. Okay, well, then the risk goes up because you don't know. You're acting uncertainty. But I think aside from that, like you, it's hard to advise somebody like, hey, what should you do now for the next year or two? But if you zoom out long enough, right, you can analyze these trends. And I think the tendency for a lot of people, and myself included, is to think shorter term all the time, right? Like, if I do this now, what will happen like right now? Or what will happen in a year? Or will it be good for me in 2 years when or will I crash and burn? And it's like, well, zoom out 10 years, like minimum, maybe 30 years. Like, have you ever thought about your life on a 30-year, like maybe if you're 80, you're probably like, I don't really want to think about 30, but like, you know, for people, especially people who are like starting out their career and thinking about, okay, like 30 years, like, I don't know, you'd be maybe what, 50?
Yeah.
Like that's you're kind of rolling through your career at that point, and like where
you should be at the top of your career.
Like where do you think you could actually be? Like 30 years, that's, I don't know. I mean, it does go by, but I mean, it's a longer time than a lot of people think. And if you look at the trends, like I think we're just going to see more printing of money. Like the system has to do it.
Yep.
And asset prices continue to rise on that system, right? Like in those dollars, like not denominated in the dollars that they keep printing, assets keep rising.
Yeah.
So if we see some Bitcoin strategic reserve and then some world pivoting to Bitcoin, maybe it's a slightly different scenario, but I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, I mean, it still spells disaster. It's kind of like eating alphagettis, right? Eventually you go to the bathroom, it spells disaster. I couldn't resist. It spells disaster for the fiat system.
Yeah.
For fiat money and dollars, right? Like you could just see, right? We're already in a impossible debt situation, debt repayment, and we're just gonna like make it twice as bad. So Tom Karadza, Rockstar, Tom and Nick, Rockstar Real Estate, again, great macro analyst. He pulls data from lots of different sources. And, you know, he has pointed out that
More sources than us, that's for sure.
Yes, more and better. Than random people on the internet. No, but he's pointed out, like, every time there's been a response to some sort of financial crisis, it gets like exponentially larger, right? You had the great financial crisis. There was a big response financially from governments, and then,
and it gets larger because it has to.
Yeah, because it doesn't have the. It's like, I don't know, like taking painkillers or something, right? Every time. Like if you get used to them, you need more and more to achieve the same effect. And so it's the same thing with dulling the pain by printing money. You need more and more to have the same effect.
Which is kind of dovetails with what we were talking about the Canadian economy. And yeah, we were just coming out of COVID, and we have all this kind of impacts of inflation there. And, we did this massive stimulus to kind of help out.
Yep.
Help us out of that crisis, and now we're coming into like potentially another one with tariffs, and we're going to have to
sooner than we thought.
Yeah, we're going to have to do something possibly even bigger with less effect. Like just that's the trend, anyways.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean you can't help but wonder: is this what Trudeau wants? Is this just playing into his hands as far as being able to unleash massive fiscal stimulus? And then presumably more control of things, and maybe it will be tied to a CBDC. That's the other concern, right? Is that they're going to send people money, but it's going to be on a central bank digital currency, and it's going to be like time limited or whatever. So we're going to send you a $2,000 check, but you got to spend it this month, and here's the things you can spend it on. Right. So, but that's the way of
my buddy's company over here. Yeah. My other friend's company over there.
I mean, if you own a grocery store, yeah, good for you. I mean, actually, I wouldn't want to because they're going to get so much hate as prices go up. But that's the concern, right? This is their way to slip in more control over the populace, over the government.
A simple fix is just buy a cow, buy a chicken. Well, prices are cheap.
Yeah, but you can't. Yeah. Right? It's all outlawed. You can't just go buy a cow. You got to have a quota license if you want that. So it's a real big thing. I think we
fixed all the problems, Mark.
Did we?
I think so.
I think we pointed out a lot of them. Yeah. And we fixed them, but it's going to be an interesting time for sure to see. And if you're making a major decision, probably wait. And then, so you talked about kids. We should wrap up, but you talked about young people at the beginning of their career.
Yes.
You're 20 years old. What's going to happen in 30 years? Like, how could you possibly know?
Yeah, you can't. Right? You can't
predict. But then, what do you do? Right. So, I mean, we talked to Jobst Landgräbe, and he said, like, have a strong foundation in like math-based stuff.
In reality?
Well, reality first of all, but math-based things, or
he said things that are real.
Trades, things that are real, or like trades where you can actually do stuff. And so, I mean, I'm an advocate of the trades. I don't think people say like, oh no, plumbers are going to be out of business because of AI. I don't see it. Right? Maybe if you're building cookie cutter homes. And like, okay, you can kind of mass fabricate them and 3D print them. And like, if everything goes in the exact same spot every time, you can have a AI plumber or something, I guess. Or, I mean, more likely a factory built stuff, right? Built by AI. But I mean, I just think like there's always going to be a need for trades, for skilled trades, right? Lower end stuff, they're going to find ways
There's no need for unskilled trades.
Well, it's always the unskilled trades that get automated out of a job, right?
Yeah.
So skilled trades. I don't know. Have a wide base. Either know how to do math or know how to swing a hammer.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is that there is a lot of opportunity to learn how to use AI tools and integrate them into your business, make things better, faster. Like that's the whole point of technology, right?
Yeah.
It's to improve your efficiency, reduce costs, try and deliver your service better, faster, cheaper, stronger than the next guy, and make the world a better place. Like ultimately that's what it's doing, right? You're expending your time and energy thinking, like primarily thinking and serving other people.
Yeah.
and you're rewarded for that, right? And the marketplace is rewarded by getting better products and services at a cheaper price, basically.
Yeah.
And yeah, when you try and get in the middle of that system, which I think should work pretty well on its own, and you start saying, all right, well, we're going to print money and give it to those people, even though their service is not as good as the other guy, or it's like, not truly serving people. And that's where things really kind of get messed up. That's why I'm just thinking, like, if Trudeau, you always kind of pick on Trudeau, but like I just think any leader in general, like, why would you want to create a world where there is such a divergence between the rich and the poor? People can't make, like, what kind of society are you creating? Like, and do you actually want to live here? Like, if you want to make Canada into this country where there's like the ultra rich, and then there's like there's no middle class, like nobody can really provide for their family, like things, it's just turmoil. Like, you walk down the street, are you happy and proud you live here? Or like,
okay,
like,
but are you walking down the street?
Well, that's the thing, right? Like, where do you live? With
common people?
Yeah, what do? You just drive around in a private jet and go skiing, like, and everybody get out of my way, and like.
I mean, so if you were more conspiracy minded, Brent, which some of us at this table
you want
are,
all the plebs to be in like 15-minute cities, and then
essentially you have two classes, right? And I think Trudeau kind of believes this, right? There's a class of people who are suited to rule, and then there's the people that they rule. And this is just the natural order of things. Yeah. Right? I mean, if you look,
Did he read the Animal Farm and all these other books?
Well, we laugh about it, but it's like the reason that was written is because it was true.
Yeah.
It wasn't just some fairy tale.
Now it's happening
thing.
Again.
I mean, it's always happening in some form or other. But yeah, I truly believe that there's a group of people who think that, like, they're suited to rule, and they get all the perks, right? They get the private jets to Davos. They get the, they can lecture people on climate change while they're flying in their private jet all over the world, right? There's so many examples of hypocrisy, but it's essentially like, yeah, it's good for me, and then I need to stay in power, right? Or at least ensconce myself in the halls of power firmly, so that when I am out, I've got, like, I'm okay. Yeah. And I will never actually have to walk down the street with common people. Like, why would I ever do that?
Well,
right?
because then if you did that, you wouldn't be able to sleep at night. Like, you go home and be like, man, I'm really making this world the worst place, and I'm not very good.
Yeah, if you actually thought that way, I think you wouldn't be able to sleep at night because of the rocks that hit you in the head that people were throwing at you, right? And I'm not advocating that, but it has happened to people threw rocks.
You're just pointing it out. Somebody did it. Yeah, somebody threw the rock at it. Yeah, okay.
But I mean, that's what kind of world are we creating? So. Yeah. And again, what is the antidote? I think the antidote is for regular people to steward. Well, yes, steward their resources and wealth, but then live out life in a way that glorifies God, and that counteracts the self-aggrandizing and centralization of power.
Because I think if we're all honest, like, we do tend to want to be those people too, right? Like, I don't know, we want power, we want wealth, we want, like, right? And just it's a constant battle to fight against it. But if you don't have faith, and you don't have God in your life, you don't have an eternal perspective, you don't understand, like, hey, we talked to Emma Cubbett, we talked to Jeff Nevin about creating affordable housing. Like, that's a desire in their hearts that they actually want to make the world a better place. If that's not there, those organizations don't exist, none of this stuff gets done. Like, yeah. What kind of world do you live in then?
Exactly. And this is like individual people and organizations pushing this. It's not the government doing it.
And what Emma's goal was 10,000 affordable units. Yeah. Like, one person, I don't know. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
I don't.
So, okay. Well, I think that's enough depressing news for one day. And a little bit of hope and motivation for people, I think. But there's another good current events episode. We'll be interested to see what happens in the coming. I think we'll have more clarity in the next couple of months,
couple decades. Looking back, we should do a looking back episode. Looking back over the last 20 years, this is what happened. So clarity there.
We probably still get it wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, let's wrap it up there. Thanks to our listeners, and until next time,
Steward your wealth wisely. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Two Stewards Show. If you like my voice better, click subscribe.
if you like my voice better, click share.
If you like both, give us a 5-star rating.
To learn more about the show, head on over to twostewards.ca and explore our free resources. To interact with the show, feel free to reach out at hello@twostewards.ca.
We will see you in the next episode. In the meantime, steward your wealth wisely.
Nailed it.